Hello and welcome to the first installment of the Sage X3 Sage Advice sessions, focused today on document management. Feel free to ask questions in the chat and I'll attend to those after the presentation. If we run out of time, I'll make sure to answer them via email. First, a quick overview of Sage X3. Sage X3 is an end-to-end business management solution aimed at the distribution, manufacturing industries, as well as other industries with multi-entity, multi-legislation, complex organizations. Modules include financials, purchasing, stock management, production and project costing, sales management, and a CRM, an embedded CRM. It is complemented by specialized partner-developed solutions here on the right. Today, we'll be focusing on document automation. Sage X3 has been widely adopted around the world due to its extensive functionality and its ability to support multiple legislations and languages. Altec DocLink is a document management and process automation solution, tightly integrated with Sage X3. DocLink helps you go paperless and automate tasks in many departments, such as Accounts Payable, Accounts Receivable, HR. In a poll, we ask, what are your biggest challenges working in office or remote? Where are the bottlenecks? And the answers were A, too much paper, B, accessing the right data quickly. If I want to compare an invoice to a purchase order, then I need to get that improved, C. D, after that, I'll have to enter all these invoices manually. And E, I'll need to file that properly. And that was before we all started working remotely. So how does it work and what can it do? Here, Sage X3 on the right is awaiting information. Here is the DocLink repository, which firstly captures incoming documents that you can scan and put through optical character recognition, or DocLink can read an email queue and extract and read PDF attachments, extract all the information that it needs, and correctly index it. Next, processing documents. Here we have a powerful workflow engine to route these documents through statuses and people. For example, an AP invoice has no error and just needs to be approved. Or a price discrepancy was found between a purchase invoice and the original PO. That needs investigation, not yet approval. Upon completion of the process, a transaction is automatically created in Sage X3. It's a bidirectional exchange with X3. The original PO was placed in the DocLink repository a long time before the invoice was received. Plus, there is an easy search and retrieval function of the document. Imagine documents at your fingertips, searchable in DocLink via the web, via a mobile, or from within Sage X3. Then we can deliver that document out based on how the customer or vendor or person or printer wants to receive it. DocLink can also be used to batch send invoices to customers and gives them a self-serve portal to retrieve and retrieve them when needed. So it's not only accounts payable. Before we dive into the application, here's an example of an extensive workflow. This drives the path a document will follow based on certain conditions. If we follow the arrows at the top, we see the document arriving from capture, unprocessed, going through validation, checking for discrepancies, and if there are none, the PO is matched, ready for import, and entered into Sage. And that's all automatic. There's no intervention. It goes straight there. If, on the other hand, a discrepancy was found, then it is routed to an approval workflow. Let's have a look. Here I'm in the first part of the process that I mentioned before, and that's document capture. So I can import my documents, manually. And I can, by dropping them into this window or browsing. So for instance, I can capture all of these and now they're going to be put through the interpreter and indexed. Or I also have, if I have queues feeding, DocLink is going to read these queues and retrieve batches of information to verify. And here I've got 3 batches with a number of documents within them. Let's take the last one. And in this batch, I have 2 invoices. And on the left-hand side, I see thumbprints of those with a little signal. The first one has a little tick mark, and that means that all the information found in the document, which we see on the right-hand side here, you can see these boxes where things have been interpreted. All that information has been placed into data fields on the left-hand side, and everything is complete. It might be the second or third time that we receive an invoice from that supplier, and the system has learned to recognize the format and knows what to do with all that information and how to match it to data fields. We're not as lucky with the second one. Most of the information has been recognized except the vendor, and that could be because the description or the name of the vendor is a little bit different on the invoice, but for whatever reason it stopped there. So the way to remedy that is to click on the field on the document, and that knows what to do, and it's got the tick mark as well. That little arrow would allow me to select the vendor manually in the Sage X3 Accounts Payable Vendor Master, as this is fully integrated. But this invoice is correct now, and I can press submit, and we're going to be able to go to the next step in the process, which is workflows. And that's where we are now, and we're into the workflow, and we can see that we're interested in the AP processing workflow. As I said, there could be more than just accounts payable. And what we have also here is a status. So if you recall what we showed in the workflow example before, we had a status of unprocessed. So that's the beginning of the, these invoices haven't been able to go any further because these invoices are accounts payable invoices without a purchase order. So they need to be codified, and that's why they've been stopped here. So let's have a look at the last one. For instance, I'm going to open that invoice. I'll see the document itself, and I can see some information. I can click here to see what has been interpreted so far. Yes, the system has recognized some of that information, and what I need now is to code that invoice. So I'm going to create a header for my future accounts payable invoice. Well, actually, the system is going to create most of it, or all of it. It's now matching the information that it found on the invoice with Sage X3 tables, in the background. And I've got all my header here, and I know that it's supplier NA61. It's to control account, accounts payable, and it's invoice, or as it's called in Sage X3 source document 33082, and that's where it's going to be matched. The next thing I need to do is to add a distribution of expenses. So here I am ready to do that, and I need to pick a code so I can use abbreviations. As I use the magnifying glass, X3 is going to open the X3, DocLink is going to open the X3 chart of accounts, retrieve all the account. It found one with that abbreviation, advertising, and I now have an account. Next thing is the amount. So I could keep adding if I have multiple distributions on the same invoice. In this case, I'm going to take the whole invoice into one single account, and I can see the amount here, 21,875. And now the difference is 0. And what I could do now is if I go back to notes here, I could put some notes, or I could approve or deny. the next thing is the next stage, and it's been suggested already, through the workflow. Depending on my level of authority, it knows that I can, send that to enter it into Sage. That's the, the end step here. Maybe if I was a bit more junior, I wouldn't have been able to do that, and it would have been sent to, maybe the CFO for approval. So let's leave this invoice, for now, and we're going to have a look at the second example, which is an accounts payable invoice with a purchase order. And I'm looking at my statuses here, and I've got a queue for the ones with PO discrepancies. So they've been, let's see what has been stopped. And there's one invoice here, invoice number 17536 for a PO finishing, by 90, and that invoice has been, stopped because of discrepancies. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to have a look at the supporting documents. So remember that we have a purchase order with that invoice, and that purchase order was put into the DocLink repository ahead of time. So what I'd like to do is to open, these documents and understand the nature of these discrepancies. So here I've got, my purchase order, and you can recognize a purchase order coming from Sage X3 Crystal Report. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to have all my documents, side by side. I'm going to decrease the magnification a little bit to see these documents in full. Here I have my purchase order next to my invoice. So notice that I've got a post-it note here, and it's something that the system did on its own. I can do my own, sticky notes if I want to, and that helps when, the invoice is going from department to department. But in this case, it was inserted by the system, and it explained the reasons why this invoice was stopped. And there's some discrepancies in line 1. There's a price discrepancy, $625 on the purchase order and $525. And that's true if I have a look at $525, and I've got a $625 here. And the second line has a quantity discrepancy. I've got 150, and I was invoiced for 120. Actually, the supplier told me that they were back ordering 30 units. So that's normal. Nonetheless, it was a discrepancy. And with the other concerning price, the invoice was stopped. DocLink also looks after all the auditing process of that if you need to refer to these invoices in the future. And here it could be system notes or user notes. And here we've got a user note, and someone on the 10th of February said they spoke to the purchaser, the person that organized this purchase order, and there was a price negotiation after the PO had been entered, and that explains, the discrepancy. Then I can move on to, approve or deny, and into the next step in the workflow. And these invoices, will or will not, end up created in Accounts Payable. Let's have a look at, I'll just, log out of this. Actually, there was one more thing I wanted to demonstrate, so we'll go back in. And wanted to show you what happens from a Sage X3, perspective. So that purchase order that we were looking at, before was purchase order 90. And we're inside, X3 here, and we can see the two lines, 100 units and 150 at 625, etc. What DocLink has done is whether, in DocLink or in Sage X3, I can retrieve, documents quickly. And what they've done is that they've inserted a new button here inside Sage X3 so that I can quickly view my documents. So as you can see, if I have the two side by side, as I click view documents, it showed the documents that are related to that purchase order. And, once again, I can go back in here and open them either side by side or tiled. So that's another way of doing it. I can have a look at my tax invoice here and have a look at the lines, and I can continue my investigation. And I did that starting from Sage X3. One more thing that I wanted to show you, saw in the workflow diagram that the document can go through a number of different people. And that means that, they have to be there to do, their part of the approval process, but they might not always, be there. So we also have the ability to enter delegations. So here I can say that I'd like to add, so maybe someone is going on annual leave and we don't want all these invoices to be stopped for a month. So we can add a delegation here. And I can select what I want to have, delegated. Let's say all of AP is to be delegated, and I'm going to delegate that to the CFO from the 25th to the 30th. And I can save my delegation, and from now on, the workflows are going to react to that change of delegation and route this request for approval to the CFO instead of me at the present time. Okay, so what are the benefits? And some of them are quite obvious. In terms of cost saving. We can eliminate a fair bit of offsite storage for records because they're going to be electronic from now on. Even paper and photocopy expenses are going to be reduced. From a personnel point of view, there's not that many hours to spent, and that's in the time savings, searching for documents, collating documents, filing, copying, etc. And we have a lot more robust approval process. And we also have remote access. So as I said, since the last couple of years, a number of us have been working, remotely, and we need to have access to all the documents as if we were in the office. And probably from a more strategic point of view, we don't have invoices, sitting in an in-tray, somewhere, or being emailed, across in a less than timely manner. So we can take advantage of early payment discounts. We can avoid late payment fees, and audit is completely supported. We saw the notes and we saw the way the system is logging all these different steps that the that invoice goes through, and that makes it easier at audit time, and also from a disaster prevention point of view, it's a lot more efficient. Thank you for your attention.